Hey, it's Jamie, and welcome to a selects edition of Eventual Millionaire. This is where we go back and find the best of the best, the ones that you loved from the past 6-7 years. We've been doing this a long time, and there's some amazing interviews with amazing guests that you have not seen yet. So we are bringing them back. It is the selects edition. Let us know what you think, and I hope you enjoy.
Potent advice and inspiration from real self-made millionaires. Welcome to the Eventual Millionaire with your host, Jamie Masters.
Welcome to Eventual Millionaire. I am Jamie Masters, and it is my honor to have my good friend, Dr. Jeff Spencer, on the show. Now, I'm going to tell you a quick little intro for him. I usually don't do this, but I met him at an invite-only event, and he blew me away. And I actually have a little testimonial. It said part... I can't even read my own handwriting. Part doctor, part guru, part medicine man from Lance Armstrong. I think that sums it up. You are an artist, sir. Thank you so much for coming on the show today. It's an honor.
You're so welcome. Thank you.
Okay. So again, every time I talk to you, I just have a joyous experience. So I know that the listeners will have that too. Give me a little bit of your background, because you're also an Olympian. You have so much amazing background that I couldn't even cover it all. So tell us what you do.
Okay, what I do, or the background, or how I got to where I am, whatever. So, well, I guess the place that it really starts is that when I was 7, I thought it'd be really awesome to become an Olympian. I just had that in my brain. I wanted to march into the parade on the opening day ceremonies. It wasn't really how I was going to do it. It wasn't the passion about a particular sport. But then when I was 11, I showed some very unusual talent on a bicycle. And I realized, okay, that's how I'm going to do it. I'm going to become an Olympic cyclist, and that's how I'm going to march in the parade. And I gave myself 10 years to do that between the ages of 11 and 21. And I drew my little plan on how I was going to do it, which was simple. I was going to be brave. I was going to work hard, and I was never going to make an excuse. That was my plan. And I was fortunate because I had amazing mentors, because the last time I saw my dad when I was 13, and that's its own story, but I had angels come into my life at strategic points that taught me important things. My cycling mentor, who was a 5-time national champion, 3-time Olympian, he taught me how to win. He said, this is really a skill that you learn. It's not just trying harder. And let me show you how to do this. And I had the brain and the mentality to be able to absorb that. And then when I was 18, getting close to the 21 Olympic time that I hadn't made yet, but was still aspiring to, I had and met my second life mentor, who was a Victorian born in the late 1890s, and he was a Renaissance man. He was a Shakespearean actor. He was a playwright. He was a poet. He was a trained university metallurgist. He was a war correspondent in World War I, and he developed a whole new type of glass art sculpture, and he chose me to be his apprentice. And I was basically an athlete. And he chose me because he saw something in me that he felt could be that person that he needed, but he could also cultivate me. And what he did when we took our breaks at lunch, he read the poets to me. He read the great philosophers. He played classical music. And he said, I need to fill you up on this stuff. And somehow he saw something in me that enabled him to reach out to me, that changed my life permanently forever, with the help of those amazing people, among others, the shoulders of giants that I stood on. I did become an Olympian when I was 21. So we checked that box off. But what was important is how I got there and what I learned from the experience. And unless you've been in something at that level, it's really impossible to help take people to their greatness. And that's kind of what I do, like right now. I really craft the blueprint for people's greatness is what I do. And the other side of this is that my university training was in sports science. So I knew how to craft a body that could push and stay in the game long enough to be able to get to a point where once you learned how life works, then you could create your longest legacy, but you were still in the game because you had a great second half to do that. And what was interesting is that when I was advising athletes and to become highly paid professionals and gold medalists, which I've done a million times, I helped business people that came to me that wanted to become their own champions. So I was able to take what I learned and what I knew and apply it to individuals and sports entertainment. and in business. It's kind of non-denominational. At this point in time, I do work in the business world with individuals, teams, and organizations. And my whole deal is that there's only one of you as a team or an individual or organization in this creation. And my job is to help you craft your blueprint to your greatness. And that's what I do. That's how I got here.
Oh, I love it. And I didn't even know part of that story. And I'm looking behind you, looking at that champion's blueprint. And that's what blew me away.
Yeah.
I was like, what the heck is this thing? He has it on his cards. And I'm like staring at it because it's so involved, right? Can you explain a little bit? Because that's the how of what you're actually doing.
Well, what I discovered is that winning big is never an accident. Greatness is not an accident. People think you stumble into it, or it's talent and will, and you try harder and you get there. Great idea, but that's not true. There's a process by which a person is cultivated. Their mind, body, and soul is deliberately cultivated to learn the skill and the assets to be able to achieve. And to me, goal achievement is the life fundamental skill. Because if we can't manifest, then our dreams kind of don't matter, because they're not going to find their way to the surface anyhow. And I feel like there's a lot of mythology that surrounds the whole idea of goal achievement out there. And the problem with that is that people think that they're the problem because they're not achieving. And I'm saying, well, you know what? I actually think a lot of this is the model. It's appealing to our human nature, but our human nature is not what gets us to great. It's really our champion mind that gets us there. And it's not just positive thinking. There are certain skills that you need. And I sat down and I said, what does this look like? And there's two fundamental parts to being able to achieve your goals consistently, predictably, and repeatedly. You got to know how to prepare to achieve your goals. No preparation, you can't get there. You can't just start and make it happen. Guessing doesn't work at a certain level. And then I realized that in contrast to the preparation, there was the performance side. And that's the champion's golden rule. First you prepare, then you perform, you do the homework, and the test is easy. So I've crafted that model that makes playing big our normal rather than the occasional exception. And we can go into detail if you'd like to do that as well.
We are definitely going to, because what was so amazing about the model was that I looked at it and half of it is preparation and the other half is in the game. And I was like, nobody talks smart goals, all that stuff. Like nobody talks about that stuff.
What? Well, here's just between you and me, the secret is that, rather than just smart goals, people want and need the right goal.
Definitely.
To me, which I've created a criteria for that I work with my clients with. I did that last night with my semi-private coaching group. I said, we're going to talk about how do you know that you have the right goal? And so I've created the criteria for that. And I appreciate your sensitivity into that because, again, the mythology of goal achievement is rampant. And I feel that usually the loser, in a certain sense, is the person that's willing to do the work. They can do the work. They deserve to win and play big. But the model has not enabled them to be able to get to where they want to go.
This makes us all feel better also, just in general about it all, true. Right? Yeah, because it's a flawed model. And if it's a flawed model, then it's not us. And then we can achieve the goals that we really want. So can you walk us through what the model is? I know what I would love to do is put a screenshot on the show notes also so everyone can take a look at it because I absolutely adore it.
Yeah, we can do that. Sure. Yeah, absolutely. So let's get started on the preparation side. Yes, preparation is important. We have to be prepared to start. And so there are 5 steps that history has revealed to me through my 45 years in the high performance world that we must go through. And step number 1 is clarity. We must have explicit clarity on our goal, because when we have explicit clarity on our goal, meaning that we have the right goal that aligns our mind, body, and soul, then what that does, that gives us focus, which is goal focus. And goal focus is the ability to hyper-focus and get stuff done with simultaneous total peripheral vision. And that's a very special perspective that champions have. The anxiety is low, the confidence is high, because they have the right goal.
I thought it, I was just going to say, I thought it was a typo on your sheet when I was just looking at it before you explained it.
Everybody does. They're so proud of pointing out a typo. Jeff, excuse me, please. But typo. They're so proud of themselves. I say, well, that's actually intentional. You see that little trademark next to it? That means focus is goal focus.
That's awesome.
And so, man, that's where we always start. Because if we don't have the right goal, then we worry. And when we worry, our mind starts to spin. We become apprehensive. We can't invest in our future because we're uncertain. That's like a no-win proposition.
What is this? And I would love to dive. I know we've got so much to talk about, and I want to dive in every single piece. I don't know if we have enough time, but I love talking to you. So how does that nuance of knowing, because it feels like it could be a slippery slope on exactly perfect right goal, and I'm worried as all heck, right? Is there a
no? Well, no, we're not chasing perfection. Again, the definition of the right goal is that it's a goal that aligns your mind, body, and soul. And when you have the right goal and you run your proposed goal through the criteria that will challenge you to have to defend the goal that you think you want to pursue. See, people don't have a relationship with the goal. They just think they're really thinking about, what am I going to get back once I achieve this? Car, confidence, boat. They don't really have a relationship with the goal. And if you don't have a relationship with the goal, then you can't do what's necessary to support its creation. And in my experience with that. And so the right goal aligns your mind, body, and soul. And what does that mean to us? It means that we have taken our goal and we have challenged it against a criteria that forces us to have to look at it in a different way. And if we can answer the key questions that are part of the right goal, is this relevant? Are there indicators that tell me that this is the right goal for me? Is there enough gravity between me and it? Is the height and aspiration of this big enough for my mind, body, and soul? Is the time to completion? Do I have the time to do this? Is it the right time? If we can, in the affirmative, answer that, then we have alignment with our mind, body, and soul. And we experience that as a confidence in the goal, and excitement to get started, and really kind of a belief that we can actually do this. But most people think that, well, if I take the time to think about all this stuff, then somebody's going to butt in line, or I'm going to lose the opportunity, or the universe doesn't think I have enough confidence in this, so it's going to take away my idea. I mean, that's how human nature thinks.
Because we're a little crazy sometimes, and that's okay too.
Well, most of the time we are, and so we need a mechanism that's our truth serum against that, so that we can start to believe that we can actually do it, manifest, and live a life of passion and contribution.
I love how cut and dry you make it seem, though, too, because it seems so wishy-washy for people. Like, is it the right goal? You're like, does it go through these criteria, yay or nay? And then if they do, then you can progress to the next level, instead of trying to be like, oh, if it feels right or whatever. And don't get me wrong, feeling right.
You don't want to do that. It's like, you don't want to do that, because there's a trail of evidence that your intuition will testify to. But if you try to make it something that it's not, and you guess, that could be a very expensive mistake. And that's the reason why this really starts with this. Because here's a classic example of that, is that I know somebody that paid $25,000 for a mastermind, and he had this idea for this goal. And the mastermind told him, well, your apprehension that you have is the problem. You need to penetrate the fear by overcoming the fear, by taking action on that which you want to happen. And I said, I don't know if that's a good idea, because maybe the fear is your friend that's telling you you're not ready to pursue this yet. Let's be really clear that we interpret this correctly. But everybody, yeah, do it. Let's go, man. Come on, you can do it. Just do it. Do it. Put this thing to rest, man. Show them who's boss. And so he went out and he wasted $25,000 on an idea. And the $25,000 that he spent for the mastermind was more than worthless, because of the harm that it did to him, his reputation, and his sense of value as a manifester, having to face what just happened there. And it was really bad advice, because it was misinterpreted. So I'm not saying that emotions and passions aren't important. I'm just saying that we need to understand what's behind that. And sometimes we need to be talked off the cliff.
This is why you're part doctor, part medicine man. That's why it makes.
That's where the medicine. That's right, man. That's where the guru side comes into it.
Totally.
So yes.
I absolutely adore that. And it's funny, because when people get into it, sometimes there's just too many opinions, and it's hard to see the forest for the trees. And that's why having an actual model makes a difference.
Yeah. Well, also the creation of the model. Where'd it come from? This isn't something I just made up. I spent 45 years in the high performance world as a participant myself, working with prolific achievers to see what the truth was. It was revealed to me through the process of doing it. And so rather than a marketing gizmo or something that sounds right and we hope that it's going to happen, we have a body of evidence that tells us that it is what it is.
This is why I love you. Evidence. Who knew? Yes. On this online world, we need that. Yes.
Yeah. Well, our mind is the trickster, because it talks us into things that aren't real. And so when I was talking to my semi-private group last night called the Champions Club. I was telling them about this very thing. It's like, because somebody asked me, well, how do you know whether what you feel is right or wrong? And I said, it's the trail of evidence. If you look at the evidence and it's there, then it tells you how fast to progress and step on the gas. But if it's not there, don't make it up that it is when it's not. You know, and so there are these indicators that we need to be mindful of, and that's kind of my job to share with people what that is.
An objective view. All right, let's continue on the model because I have so many more questions that I can ask you. I want to finish it up though. Yes. So next step.
Okay. Yeah. Step number 2, we're still in preparation. We're not even pursuing the goal yet. And that's called motive. Like, why are we actually doing this? And the reason why, an accountability to have the right reasons for pursuing a goal, is that when we know it's the right thing because we vetted it against our mind, body, and soul, what that does, it gives us drive, because we're going to fight for it now in a different way because we know why we're doing it. It's an entirely different ball game. And then step number 3 is impact. What's the impact of our goal when it's achieved? Nobody ever thinks about that. But when we take the time to really think about it and go through the exercises as it occurs in the playbook for the program that I've created for this, when you really understand this and have a close encounter with it, mind, body, and soul, then you leave with a different level of purpose. Your core conviction to pursue and achieve your goal is exponentially changed because of that.
What does that look like? How do you define what the impact is? You just think about it? Like, tell me a little bit more about what you're doing.
You don't think about it. You will know. Like, you will say, what is the impact of this on me and my legacy, good or bad? If it's wishy-washy, then you haven't spent time answering the question.
What if, so I just got done interviewing somebody that helps people with exits, right? He had $100 million exit and all that fun stuff. Yeah. And then the impact, though, that they didn't think about afterwards.
Well, there you go. Well, then why did we wait till afterwards?
Right. Well, I guess that's my point, right? They were like, oh, I lost my business and now I'm in grief because it was my baby.
Right. There you go. That is 100% predictable. And that is 100% preventable as well. That's the conversation that has to happen before.
Love it.
You know, look, there's no, everybody knows I work with Lance and I work with Tiger, right? And they both kind of have black eyes. Okay, I get that. But part of the question was, where was the person early on in their life that talked to them about the risks that they would be taking later? Like, all of a sudden this just shows up. I mean, that's the reason why, in my opinion, anybody in business, even if you're just getting started, first year, third year, fifth year, whatever, you're on your way to your first million, there needs to be this level of conversation about our experience as a human going through this. And that's what I do with my group and my advisory. It's about you. When people say, what do you need for your business? What do you need? They go to their business. My deal is, what do you need as a human? Can you lead? Are you confident in what you're doing? These are the really important X factor sides that need to be there fundamentally for us as a human. And that's part of my rampage, is to make sure that we don't live our lives in illusion with just a hope of a bigger future. But I would rather have a certainty of progression to be able to get there.
I love that you call it a rampage. I agree. I love your feistiness around it all. Exactly.
I am. But on a rampage, I don't accept the fact that there's only one of us in all of creation. We're going to look back in 70 years and said that we squandered our life. That's not acceptable to me.
I love it.
It's not acceptable.
You're getting everybody fired up now too. I know. Okay. That's awesome. This is why every time I talk to you, I'm like, oh, I want to go do more things. That's why you're called the corner man, right? I love it. All right. So what's the impact, and what's the next one?
There we go. So step number 4 is mindset. And so when we talk about mindset, we're not talking about affirmations. We're not talking about positive thinking. We're not talking about gratitude journals. We're talking about, do you really have what it takes to step into what has to go right to manifest this? Because if you have the champion's mind, then you can take action despite your fear-based survival impulses that hold you back. But you have to understand what that is and how it operates, because it's the ultimate trickster. But if you understand our human nature and how it talks to us and talks us into doing things, Have you ever said anything to somebody that you regret saying, but yet it seems so good when you said it? Well, that's a typical example of our human mindset, because it's not about excellence, it's about survival. That has to be transcended by the champion's mind that can take action despite our survival impulses, because it can hold that space to make that happen. And when you can do that, then you have the rarest of all human attributes, which is courage. Taking action despite your fear-based survival impulses. Not being reckless and trying to show it who's boss, but having evidence of what has to go right when, and stepping into that execution when it counts.
How do you know when? I have so many questions on this too. How do you know if you do or if you don't? Because like beforehand, you were telling the example of the guy that had fear, and it's like, ooh, well, where was that? Just a fight or flight response? Is that trying to something that he should get over? Because that's kind of what you were just saying beforehand. How do you know the difference between those?
Well, we have to understand our human nature. I mean, I have a whole chapter devoted to that, and a whole video devoted to that, and that's usually what I will present when I'm on stage, because it's that vital to me. And unless we understand that there are two parts to us that are at war with each other 24 hours a day, you have your human primal instincts that are fear-based, that only care about survival. They don't care about your excellence. And then you have the champion's mind on the other side that doesn't get first dibs at every moment, but it does have the final say. And our champion's mind is a composite of us that's part of our intellect, our intellectual library mixed with our intuition. And we know how that presents, and we know what decisions it makes in critical situations. And therefore, when that's applied, then it overcomes our human mindset and it pushes it into the background, because you can't shut that off. Like some of the mythology here. Well, I can't take action right now because I'm afraid. What do you mean you can't? You just have to know what to do and execute it despite the fact that you're afraid. Or I got to be perfect, therefore I can't win. Well, I helped a guy win a gold medal because I told him, you're believing that unless you're perfect, you can't win. And your whole team's thinking like that. You ought to fire your whole team and just do the one or two things that count. I said, it's not about trying your best, it's about finding a way. So we have to recognize our human nature that's incredibly predictable. It is so predictable. Given the set of circumstances, you can bet 99% of the people are going to do a predicted thing. But it usually is going the wrong way.
How do you know, though? So because it is so potent, right? And like you said, comes out first.
It could actually be lethal. Yeah,
right?
exactly.
I guess, and that's my point. What if you start working with someone and you're like, you ain't got it. You don't have the champion mindset.
I already know that in advance.
Okay.
If I'm working with them, then I discover that I haven't done my job. You know, I know in 5 minutes whether a person.
How do you know in 5 minutes? Yeah, tell me that.
I don't know. I just have this filter inside me. I hear the words. Well, I think also, being older, it takes a while. Okay, I'm 68. I got a 21-year-old daughter. I don't know what 68 looks like or feels like or supposed to be, but, with a lifetime of experience, you start to see things that just are. They are because they are. And if you see this, you know that this is going to happen. You may not think it's going to happen. That's why we make all these mistakes early in our life, because we think the way that we see it is what it is. And then once we get beat up, by the time we're 30, maybe the white flag goes up a little bit, and we realize that maybe our way isn't the way that maybe we should get some counsel on interpreting what we're experiencing rather than learning it the hard way. And so that's the reason why mentor is absolutely critical. Unless there's an influence in your life that can point out to you what the reality of it is to shortcut your learning, it may take you 20 years to get someplace that you can get to in 2 if you had the right advisory. And that's the whole reason why I created my programs, the whole reason why I do my advisory one-on-ones, the whole reason why I have my Champions Club is so that, Uncle Jeff can show up and he can point out, well, what this means is this. And our human nature we would expect it to do this. So when it shows up, we're going to avoid it. And we're going to do this instead because history tells us that this will take us to where we want to go.
So it's amazing. If Dr. Jeff lets you into his programs, and at least you have enough grit to be able to at least complete part of the circle, right? Because it
Don't like
matters.
get unscathed. We want to limit the scar tissue. The unnecessary scar tissue.
Oh, that's really funny. Okay. Yes, I completely agree. And it's amazing that is such a core piece. And I just love that you actually verify that beforehand, because a lot of people will take on coaching clients or whatever and be like, oh, I don't think they can get it, but I'm going to try and take their money and help them.
No, that's the biggest abuse of the greatest honor. The greatest honor is to have somebody entrust you with their legacy. I mean, I can't think of a bigger honor. It's got to be held really sacred, in a sacred vessel, to usher it through life's minefield, like in my opinion.
That's why I said I was honored to have you here. Like you are so wise. It's insane. Just so we're clear. I know
It's all challenge.
Right?
It's all challenge.
See, this is why I like you too. All right. So what's the next step after mindset?
Okay. The last preparation step is resources, meaning time, energy, material, supplies, team, plan, knowledge, skills. We got to make sure that that's there. That's like going into the supermarket, making sure the stock is there that we need to get started correctly. You don't need to have everything you need to achieve your goal, but you need enough there to be confident. And so when you've gone through these 5 steps and you've achieved the outcome for each of the steps, then you're left with one thing. You trust your preparation and you're ready to start. And at that point, then you push the go button, but you don't push the go button before you get there.
See, and most people start at resources. Well, what do we have? What are we working with? Let's make something up as a goal.
Really,
and let's go.
I think that's generous. Why don't we just get started and let the process fill itself in? Yeah, I mean, there is a certain amount of reading terrain through intuition. Yes, but I really feel like I've never seen anybody just guess at starting. Because here's what I do know. Starting is the first step in performance. Is that when you do start, you do not want to stumble out of the gate. And a lot of people do, because they think, I'm prepared, therefore I can just start. Really? Are you going to just do that with the launch? Okay, I've done everything, so let's just start. Maybe not a good idea. Maybe we need to have a deliberate process by which we are able to gain initial momentum that will confirm to us, our leadership, and inspire the team that all our time and effort and preparation was actually done for the right reason. It's actually paying off.
See, now everybody after listening to this is like, oh crap, no, I'm definitely not going to do that. But what you're doing is you're solving problems before you have them within the rest of the goals, the actual goal.
Duh.
Yeah, I know, right?
Well, see, here's the deal. This goes back to mindset. The entry point to all of this is mindset. No, it's not. I take that back. It's champion's mind. It's champion's mind, a living, breathing, thinking organism that can read terrain as it really is and knows what to do based upon the current context. And so, like, the reason why people usually don't prepare is that they're afraid if they don't start, then somebody's going to butt in line or they're going to get left behind. That is not a reason to start. It's not a reason to start.
What do you say to those people that have that as yeah, exactly. Go ahead.
Well, I mean, once you tried it your way, come back and let me know, and then we'll figure it out. Because I mean, certain people just think that since they think it's what it is. But, it's not really the way that it really is. So that's our first step when we're actually now pursuing the goal. But the second step is that not the second step. This is the 7th step in the process. But when we're pursuing the goal and we've achieved that lift out, that initial success that confirms to us that we're now actually pursuing the goal, it's what I call the honeymoon phase. And the honeymoon, this is where everybody's all excited. Oh my God, I got my first raise. I sold my first product. This is going to happen seamlessly. So I'm going to go out and start buying all sorts of stuff because the money's coming in. And this is where startups always screw it up. They make an assumption based upon a valuation that's a projection of projected income where nothing's real. You look at the account and there's a goose egg in there, and there's a presumption, and that can cause us to elapse into honeymoon euphoria where we overspend, we don't pay attention to our schedule, we start to get laxed on policy, and then everything starts to disintegrate and unravel, which is predictable. And we just kind of need to know that that's coming, and we should celebrate euphoria, but we need to keep our eye on the ball, and we need to make some initial adjustments to make sure that our trajectory is sound.
Do you pull back on the honeymoon effect? Do you give them a certain
Well, no, you need to celebrate it for sure. But it's like, hey, everybody, okay, man, we're going to celebrate this. Here's bonuses. And we're going to have this big party. But let's just remember one thing here is that we got to stay vigilant to our momentum. We got to protect our schedules and be sacred to deliver on what we promise. We're not going to get slack on policy because that's when everything starts to rot from the inside out. There's got to be this leadership covenant with team about what this really means. Otherwise, potential disaster.
I love that. Yeah. Solving
Disaster.
Problems beforehand. All right. You're like, and celebrate but ask all these questions beforehand to make sure that we don't celebrate too much.
Well, you set the context up, because here's the reality of this is that when you have your initial success, if your preparation is sound, that is a cause for celebration. And so we celebrate that. It's okay, great. Okay, we have a reality check against the honeymoon euphoria. And so we think, well, now that we've achieved our first success here, we have evidence. And now that we've kind of adjusted our course a little bit, everything is awesome. This will take us home. Well, hold on a second. The hard work's really beginning because there's this step called daily grind. You know what that's like? It's like, hey, everybody, I'm putting all this time and effort into this, and I'm not getting anything close back to what I think I deserve. You know what? I'm thinking about quitting, actually, because I don't know how much longer I can take this. I got grumbling employees. I'm grumbling myself. My grouch factor is in the red zone. I can't barely stand myself. I don't know how much longer I can take this. Well, let me tell you this, is that if you cannot handle the daily grind and don't plan on creating goals of distinction, because that's part of everything. And so who said it shouldn't be there? Look, everybody wants to start and make it easy. They want to have a breakout and they want to succeed. They want to bypass every step and they want to just kind of jump into the winner's circle. It doesn't work like that. So honeymoon step number 8, this is where you're going to want to quit. And unless you know how to prevent that, unless you know how to keep team together, unless you know how to structure things and what to pay attention to, then you run a high risk of quitting or bailing or having a mutiny at that point in time.
See, I've asked you this question. Go ahead.
But if you know what to do, then you're going to wake up one day and believe you can do it because you've hit critical mass.
Okay, before you get to critical mass, though, I want to ask this question because this came up before. I've already asked you this question, but I think it's really important for people to hear it too. Yeah. How long does the daily grind last? Because I feel like a lot of people listening are going, I'm so in the daily grind right now. I didn't do a great job beforehand at setting up the goal, so now my daily grind could potentially last a really long time also. So how length of time, how do we deal with it? How do we know how long it might be?
Well, the first thing that I want to say is that goal setting is not goal achievement. So you can do all the goal setting courses that you want, but if you don't know how to achieve a goal, then you may not get to where you want to go. So I want to be really clear about this. Somehow we think that, oh yeah, we just set a goal and somehow it all backfills because we can envision the castle on the hill. That's a great idea and it's important to do, but I just want to be really clear from my perspective is that setting the goal, again, it goes back to the right goal. If you have the right goal and you prepare well, then you don't even need to think about it. Well, it depends. Like when I had aspirations of becoming an Olympian, my daily grind was 9 years. But was it worth it? Yeah, of course it is. And the factors that influence the time of the daily grind are all about your preparation. It's about how well are you actually reading the context of your business moment by moment. Because the amount of illusion or assumption that you have that isn't real will extend the daily grind. That's why it's important that we have somebody in our corner being able to look at the challenges associated with the daily grind and what should be anticipated so team is informed about it, where there are no surprises. But that doesn't mean that you're not going to have to buckle down and dig deep to get through it. But again, that question, how come nobody's discussed that? So again, it depends. Mine was 9 years. I knew it was going to be 9 years. It was 9 years of pain because cycling is like really painful. I mean, you're putting yourself at your limit. I mean, it's like really painful. But yet that's kind of the cost if you want to create excellence.
How do we do
If
that
you
as
don't
a
like
leader,
it,
though? Like, especially for, so you, a single person and pushing themselves makes sense. And then how do you do that with a team that signed up for goal achievement, but maybe didn't understand? I know what you're going to say to this one already. You're a
okay, well, there you
yeah.
go. There you go. Yeah, it needs to be explained.
Yeah.
Like, okay, the tough part's coming. You think it's over because we've had a reality check. We made some corrections and now everything's going to be awesome. But, history tells us that this is what we're now going to be facing.
I love how cut and dry it is. I'm like, darn it, I know what he's going to say already in advance. And that's
well, I'm glad you had that revelation. I mean, that's fantastic.
I love it. All right, let's continue because I have so many other questions.
Yeah, okay. So just have 2 steps left. Step number 9 is breakout. This is where you go from believing you can do it to knowing you can do it. And we just need to set a target for ourselves that's not the goal, but it's the equivalent of a goal, that when it's achieved, that tells everybody else that we're now beyond the daily grind and we can actually do this. So when I declared to myself that my breakout to become an Olympian was to beat an Olympian or a national champion in the national championships for cycling, I knew I could do it. And so I beat the existing national champion, which told me I could become an Olympian. That didn't make me an Olympian, but it told me I could become one. So like when I was working with Dave Asbury as an advisor to Dave, a very close advisor as his personal advisor, as his cornerman with Bulletproof, our breakout was, well, we need to make sure that there's enough in inventory to meet the demand, and we need certain people placed at certain higher levels in the structure. And to do that, it would take this much money. So our breakout, we knew that Bulletproof was going to be big because we had the evidence that was going to happen. But we needed to confirm that, and we needed to raise a certain amount of money to get the inventory and the brain power to achieve a certain breakout that would confirm to everybody in the world and investors and everybody else that this is for real, that this was going to go big, which now it's a couple $100 million or whatever. But the point is that was deliberate. That was not an accident. And it was a very important milestone that was important for the team to see, to believe that they could actually punch this through to the finish line. So once we know we can do it, then we just need to finish the job by completing and manifesting the goal as we have described it and committed to creating. And there may be some adjustments to get there. And we want to make sure that we don't trip before we get to the finish line by doing something, an unforced mental error, because we're intoxicated by the goal itself. Because if you don't cross the finish line, you don't win. And I see this a lot, that you got to make sure that you know how to finish the job and finish 3 steps beyond. There you have it.
Okay.
First you prepare, then you perform. 5 steps in each. You follow this, you know where you are, you know what's coming, you know what's behind. You are ready to avoid preventable problems. You know what you need to do to seize potential opportunities. You show the team this, you point to it. This is where we are. This is what this means. You show great leadership. People love you for that. They'll follow you to the ends of the earth. And that's what the model is all about.
Okay. So you are so logical, it's insane. But also, I feel like you use the term manifest, intuition, and all these things too. The difference between knowing, belief, and knowing, a lot of people will be like, that's just a decision in your mind. And you're like, no, there's so much. True. Right? So tell me more about that and how you can sort of straddle both worlds.
True. Yeah, well, belief is you believe you can do it, but there's still amount of apprehension and uncertainty. It's like faith, I can do it because there's enough evidence. Trust me, the daily grind, that's the promise. If you know how to stay in the game and you don't talk yourself out of it and prematurely quit, you will eventually get to a place, if you're doing the right thing that's been vetted because you have good advice, that you will wake up and you will believe that you can do it. There's still an element of doubt in it, but there's something in you that tells you that you can do it. Knowing is, I am confident and certain that this is going to happen because I have a different body of evidence that tells me I can do it because I produce the equivalent. Beating a national champion is the equivalent of winning the Olympic trials, which I did. It's an equivalent, but it's not the same thing. It's an equivalent that told me I could do it because now I have the evidence that I knew I could do it. It's the same thing in business. That's why, as a business person, we have to select our targets carefully. because those targets will say a lot to the team. If you underestimate, they're going to say, well, you don't understand the business because that was really low. Why was it so low? Or if it was too aggressive and you don't get there and it puts a lot of stress on the team, they're going to think, well, that was too big. Why did you do that? And they're not going to trust that. And that's why this, skill of creating breakthroughs is really important. And it takes a while to learn that skill.
I bet. I can only imagine 45 years at least. Yeah.
Well, eventually you get there, you got to be at least 60 to understand how all this works. I mean, technical details are okay earlier, but the art of this, it can be learned, but the nuances of it experientially embedded into the fabric of our advisory, it takes a while, generally up to about 60.
Noted. I will write that down for when I turn 60. I appreciate you. What about like moonshot goals? Because you were talking about this before. People are like, shoot for the moon, right? You'll land around the stars and that's going to be good enough. Yeah. But there's a line there is what it sounds like.
Well, I was talking with one of our Champion Club members last night about this very thing. And I said, part of the challenge here is that you've been creating all these moonshots, but you know that this is too big for you right now. It's not possible to do this. So you don't have confidence and you've been locked up and you haven't taken a step forward because it's too big for you right now. You haven't even learned the skill yet, and it's like somehow if we have the moonshot, then everything backfills. Is that how it's supposed to work? Well, I've never seen that. It takes deliberate intention that's well structured to develop the assets to manifest those things that have to go right to inch towards the bigger vision. And, as a matter of fact, I was in outside of Boston last year presenting to 4,000 of the country's brightest high school students. And I asked one girl, I said, how old are you? She said, I'm 14. I said, what grade are you in? She said, oh, I'm a junior in college. So she skipped like 6 grades. And she said to me, Joe, I got to ask you a question. I said, okay, what? She said, everybody's telling me how smart I am and what are my goals and all that stuff. And I've told everybody what my goals are, but I don't know how to achieve them. I'm getting all A's and everything. I skipped, 20 grades, but I don't know how to achieve my goals. I'm kind of feeling like out of place here, So, what do you think about that? Well, welcome to the club. So I just think, number one, let's learn the skill of goal achievement first so you develop confidence in your ability to do it. And then you can engage loftier goals with greater confidence and certainty. And as we develop that, then we're going at our own pace. We have less anxiety. Look, I know everybody gets up at night at 2 a.m. and walks around like, what did I do? Why am I doing this? What is the next thing that I do here? I'm breaking out in the sweat, and I get that. So I just think, first thing, let's learn the skill of goal achievement and how do we prepare and how do we perform. Let's follow the champion's golden rule. And then let's go for more aspirational goals. And as I tell people, look, keep your day job so that you can develop the craft and the skill of developing the ability without being pressured to perform at the level necessary to achieve your goals consistently and predictably and repeatedly.
Every brand new entrepreneur needs to be listening to this, as well as every very, very experienced, wise entrepreneur, because I've never heard it put in that quite way. And I think what's interesting, especially on the moonshot thing, do you think that they should do a tiny, tiny goal to build confidence or just push to their limits? Like, where is that line on that?
It depends. You have to be very honest with yourself.
Sometimes that's hard.
I think, well, yes, because I know we're supposed to have as many big, hairy, audacious goals as possible. And if we don't do that, then we're not a card-carrying member of the club. I know how it goes. And so I feel that learn the skill first, because if you can do it small, like my daughter learned the model by baking a cake. She learned the model by baking a cake. And so, again, do we know and understand the steps to the model? I feel that at a certain point in time, yes, you go for a goal that's slightly outside your reach because it really generally means that you can't achieve it. You just haven't tried it yet. But it has to be consistent. And so I do feel like we need advisory and counsel about what's the right reach for us at any point in time. And that's kind of sometimes hard to do when you're around a cheerleading session where everybody's all stirred up and you're like the girl, hey, how do I actually do this? You know?
Ashamed to even ask the question, right? Because she's,
Well, yeah. You know, I got all these awards, but I have no idea how to do this. So that's kind of what I think. That's a matter of timing and aspiration. But I think it's better to be progressive in our skill development. Let's reduce our anxiety. Keeping your day job is a badge of honor. It's not a compensation. It's not a capitulation. It's not a downgrade. It's not. It's a sign of respect for your future. That's what it really is. You know?
Yeah, that's really
because
important.
You're saying, I need to learn this better first. Yeah. It's a badge of honor. Yeah. It's seriously a badge of honor. You know?
And unfortunately, people feel ashamed that they haven't quit yet, or that they can't do it, and that all that head junk, it makes it even harder for them to actually.
Well, okay, so is that the human nature? Or is that the champion's mind? Which one is it? And of course, we know it's human nature. The human mindset can just get first dibs at every moment. You know, that's not a champion mind decision.
In those moments,
no matter how.
I just have so many things. In those moments, though, how do you slow yourself down enough to know that that was human nature, and then to recalibrate in those moments to have your champion's mind?
Well, you have to have an awareness of what you're thinking and what your impulse is. Because if you watch the impulse, then as the conscious being, you can intervene and stop the chain reaction. And we have to be mindful of that. And that's something that I work very carefully with my one-on-one clients, you know, in my Champions Club, et cetera, so that we learn to understand our language of sabotage that's there. There I am sabotaging myself again. Forget it. Let's look at this as human nature. You want to know the real truth on this? Is that human nature is the imposter us. But what we do, we identify with the imposter as us because it comes so natural. That's correct. But my deal is that I don't want to live a natural life. Sniveling, whining, complaining. It's never left. I'm so allergic to whining. I'm so over it. It's to me, I want to be supernatural, superhuman, to transcend those impulses that can't take us anywhere. And it requires a lot of restraint. It requires a lot of fellowship. It requires a lot of personal substance to understand how our fear interfaces with us that's not us. And the worst thing ever is that when people say, well, that's just me. Garbage. That's your human nature that got put into you to survive you, to help you survive in moments of imminent peril. That's not the path that we take to create excellence. We have to be around this level of conversation to start to realize that a lot of the things that we've been told or that we believe have been mythology passed down. We need to know who we really are, the champion mind. That's who we really are. We do aspire to value and contribution. But then we got the other side that we didn't ask for. Every human's got that. The battle, 24 hours a day.
And we can get better and better and better. I love that you said fellowship, though, too. What role does that really play?
100%, because, you know, we need a truth serum that helps protect us from ourselves in believing the mythology. Because if we're around the mythology, a perfect example was that if you don't have a moonshot, then you're not welcomed into the club. You know, that may be the case, it may not be, but I'm just kind of hypothetical example here that we're almost afraid to maybe admit that smaller may be better for us at this time, where for me, that's a badge of courage. You know, it's like you're looking at it for what it like really is. And we need to give each other, well, I think for myself, my advisory to individuals, teams, and et cetera is like, we go at the pace that represents our ability to execute what has to go right to get us there and learn the process, you know, for next. And so we have to understand that in certain situations, we do put ourselves in places of vulnerability where we may feel out of step. We may feel a bit insecure, but that doesn't mean that that's the right thing that we should be experiencing. And So with this idea of sobriety, of reading context is like really essential. And that's why this idea of community that has a like-minded temperament and personality and inclination, we need to be around that. And we know we're in the right place when we show up and we feel calm and confidence, and it feels like it's a place that we need to be, that nourishes and enriches our soul. You know, if we feel like we're being challenged or intimidated to go for more and there's a resistance in it, then that may not be the right conversation, like at the right time.
How do you get so sensitive to those emotions or those feelings that you have? Because it seems like you're amazing at it. And I know when other people are listening, they're like, oh, I don't even know if I feel the resistance. I'm like, yeah, I guess I'm supposed to do this thing, right? How are you so sensitive to what you're feeling?
I've always been like this. I just have a heightened sense of self-awareness, but I've been able to articulate it and understand it and help other people understand the language of themselves and what their actions and responses to life are and what they mean, so that they can start to develop a relationship with self and proactively avoid circumstances that are triggers that cause us to react in certain ways that are a disservice to us and our progress forward. And it doesn't mean that we can't eventually gain the skill to transcend it. It just means, like right now, why put ourselves in a situation? Because every time we react, it reinforces the reaction, just embeds it deeper. And it creates it more difficult for us to find an exit route, like out of it.
Yes. Preach. No, seriously. I mean,
well,
yeah.
I'm just channeling the observation, you know, as I see it.
Everything is perception, and so it's really cool to be able to hear how you view the world, because it makes so much more logical sense to this crazy world that we're bumping around in anyway, right? And if we can really get that shift that you're talking about, especially with the goal achievement and the roadmap, so that way we don't feel so crazy along the way, or at least if something bumps along the road, we know why it bumped instead of trying to go, that came out of nowhere, right?
Well, it doesn't come out of nowhere. A lot of these things should be anticipated, but it takes about 50 years to get through one lap of life to start to understand the patterns. And eventually, I did this before and it didn't work, so I'm going to avoid it this time. If we can kind of shortcut that to streamline our path forward and increase our confidence and our ability to read context, to know when to turn right and when to turn left, I just can't say enough about the value of what that is and the importance of having a environment that we can immerse ourselves in that helps us understand that, to conserve our energy, to conserve our resources, to build our confidence and our certainty.
I know the value is huge, hence the reason why I'm so honored to have you on the show. Now I know we're gonna put the goal achievement roadmap in a picture, so that way you can actually see it on the show notes, so everyone can take a look at actually what goes into it. I know I have to start wrapping up, but I know I'm gonna have you back on the show again because it's a joy. What is one action listeners can take this week to help move them forward towards their goal of 1 million?
I would say the first thing that you want to do is you want to ask the question and answer the question, how are you going to show up every day? Are you going to show up from your highest self? Or are you going to show up frazzled? And make a decision, because how we show up will determine the outcomes of our actions and the accuracy of our decisions. And it will speak to other people. And in today's world, evidence of people that can gracefully show up and come from a place of conviction and be an example of being a thoughtful, considerate, living, breathing human being, I think is one of the most important things that we can do. And it's our job as humans not to pile on top of each other and add further apprehension and anxiety, but to relieve each other of that by showing up as someone that is very clear about what they're doing and why they're doing it, but most importantly, to show up and be of service to humanity and also create a life of personal value. Most important thing you can do. How am I going to show up today? Most important thing you can think of.
Oh, you are such a light in
There you
this
have it.
world. Thank you so much for coming on the show. Where can we find more about you? I know you had a bit of an offer. Everybody should check out his website, definitely, drjeffspencer.com. Are you on social media, or tell us a little bit more about how we can get in touch with you?
Yeah. Also, first off, of course, I do Facebook Lives every morning at 6 a.m. Pacific Standard Time, and I'm spewing everything that I know. So again, that would be Dr. Jeff Spencer 1. That's my Facebook location. And 6 a.m. Pacific Standard Time every morning, I purge on something, and that's a valuable resource. Also, Instagram, Dr. Jeff Spencer. Check it out. And also a couple things here. My website, as you mentioned, if you're interested in having a conversation about some level of engagement of some sort, you can go to drjeffspencer.com/cornerman, and that'll take you to a location. The other thing that I'm going to suggest here, if you do nothing else, please, if you do nothing else, go to this website. It's Black Belt Goal Achievers with an S on the end, Black Belt Goal Achievers. And it will take you to a site where there's a 42-minute video talking about the goal achievement roadmap that we've been discussing here, the dynamics, some of the unique characteristics of it, et cetera. And if this is something that you're interested in, then you're certainly welcome to avail yourself of that. But that's the best thing that I can suggest to you, at this time.
Yeah, and share it with your friends. We'll definitely put all of the links in the show
please.
notes, so that way you can actually click on the links. It'll be nice and easy. Thank you again. Like I said, I so appreciate you and taking the time to talk to us today.
Well, back at you. Just one thing I'll say is that there's only one of you in all of creation, and just please be mindful of that. And it's like you count in the biggest way possible. And every time you show up, how you show up, what you say, what you think, can change the world. So just please be mindful of that. 7 billion people on this planet, and there's only one of you, which uniquely qualifies you to do some extraordinary things. Thanks again for the privilege, Jamie. Immensely appreciated. Thank you.
Thank you, and have an amazing day. Thank you for listening and investing in yourself with your time. I so appreciate it. And if you enjoyed this episode, I would be forever grateful if you would be willing to leave a rating or review in whatever app you use for your podcast. I know that's what really bumps it up in the rankings, and I would so appreciate your time, especially if you've been a long-time listener. But of course, if you like this episode and you're brand new, thank you for being here too. Have an amazing, amazing day.